Hello, my name is Veronica Combs, and I'm an account manager at HKA Marketing Communications. We specialize in quantum technology. As I'm sure you know, this is the International Year of Quantum Science and Technology, and we are the PR firm helping get the word out about that worldwide year-long celebration. Um, Thank you for joining us today at the Quantum PR Build Your Brand, Build Your Business session. I'm very pleased to introduce Mike Kilroy. He is in charge of all of our accounts and works the hours to prove it. I've worked with Mike for not quite 3 years, and I'm a former journalist. I'm somewhat new to PR, and Mike has been an excellent teacher. And I have to say, whenever we have a debate, Mike usually wins because he really knows how to do this work. So thank you again for joining us today. I'm going to go off camera in a second. If you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A feature. You should see that link along the bottom of your screen, at the bottom of the Zoom webinar. We'll wait till the end to take those, and I will be filtering through those and handing them off to Mike. So, Mike, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Veronica. Appreciate that. And thank you all for joining. We really appreciate your time and interest. I'm going to share my screen here real quick and get it in. Let's see if I can make it there we go. Oh, sorry, hold on. Let me just get it into. There we go. Hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, again, thank you so much for your time and your interest here. I just want to tell you a little bit about HKA. So Hillary Kay founded the firm over 30 years ago. It had an eclectic range of clients. I was there 20 years ago when the dot-com boom was happening, and I worked with Hillary for about 5 years. Came back in 2019 to see if I could help sort of re-energize her tech practice. And we ended up meeting with Doug Fink of the Quantum Computing Report, who lives just a few miles from our offices. And I met him at a coffee shop, and he told me about quantum computing. And he said, Mike, if you want to be the next big thing, this is it. And we've been going that way ever since, heading in that direction. We really appreciate Doug's inspiration and help along the way. So yeah, we are the only firm dedicated to the quantum industry. We're foolhardy enough to do that years ago. And we've got about a dozen clients around the world now, from Asia, North America, Europe, and Australia. It's just a fascinating industry, and we're really enjoying it and feel very fortunate to be in it. So I guess I have to start with, what is PR? Everyone thinks they know, and so I just have to sort of give you the baseline of what I think it is. It's really about influencing the influencers, like the people who draw audience with interesting content, compelling news, good analysis. We try to tell them about your business or our client's business and our client's technology. And it's not advertising. You can't just buy your way in or say, well, I'll tell you what, if you do this, I'll buy an ad. That's not how it works. I've had clients do that and embarrass themselves. They need to worry about their audience, and their audience is key to them, and you have to help them with stories for their audience. And so we often say, we have two clients, the actual client that pays us and the media, and we treat both, with tremendous respect and diligence. It requires a lot of work. People think it's easy. I think there's PR people in movies and TV where they just go to parties and talk to the press, and and I'll give them a few drinks and everything's good. They'll write about us, and it really doesn't work that way. I have somebody who is a friend of somebody on a major TV network for 30 years, and only got their interest in a story like last year. A friend is nice to have in media, but it's really about media relationships. You develop these relationships where they trust you to give them good information, and when they're interested, that you get them the things they need to write their stories. And media have huge deadlines, and they need people who can respond quickly. And that's really almost the key thing once you get their interest, is to get them what they need. Why should you care about PR? From our vantage point, most of the clients who came to us were looking for investors, mostly in the US, investment press. That was the number one, that's been the number one goal for most people. I think that's changing now with the maturity of the quantum industry. I think people are looking to uh, get customers and tell their story about their technology, that it's ready now or almost ready for some useful application by companies, and they should be exploring it and using their technology. I think that's coming in second now, a close second to investment. Um, I think the reason to care about PR is because if you're not known, you aren't in the consideration set for anybody that you want to talk to, investors, partners, customers. Um, you have to be known. They have to not even know you, just know your name. They have to know what you're doing, what's your approach, what's your differentiation, who's your management, and it's not easy to get them to know you. So probably the best way, as we found, and I found in my career, it's through media and now influencers that they tell your story to those people as best you can, and that's why you need to care about PR. And yeah, and one thing I love about PR too, it really is a great equalizer. You'll see stories, and they'll have Google and IBM and Microsoft, and then they'll put in a fourth company, and it's your company possibly. And to the reader, that puts you at almost, not quite their level, but like, oh, if the media thought they were important enough to include in the story with all these big players, they must be something too. So that's a big part of, in my opinion, of PR's benefit. It really is a great equalizer of, especially in an industry like this where there's a race going on. And so, and I should mention too that investors like to see you in media before they invest and after they invest. That's usually a big request from them. Like when they're starting to do their due diligence, they like to see you in the media. Like, okay, what are others saying about you? Do they think you're everything you're saying? And then after they invest, they want to make sure their investment is continuing to see returns or will see returns at some point, and they need you to show your progress out there. Um, just personally, why I like PR. I was a journalist way back when for about 5 years, both a daily paper and a trade magazine. I went to the dark side about 30 years ago. I really saw, I was actually a skeptic when I was a journalist. I actually had somebody trying to pitch me something for the first time. I go, why is this person so persistent about the story? Oh, they're being paid to talk to you. I go, really? I'm just at this small daily paper, and they're being paid to get my eyeballs on what they want me to see. So and it's really an amazing thing when I got into PR. Like it really does work. I've seen it work over and over again, and I've been very fortunate to be part of some really major new technologies all along the way. So I've been part of a lot of waves, and I was even part of the when turn-by-turn driving directions. We were with the company that pretty much, well, I know, for the first to make it, and they were working with Verizon, and Verizon did 2 weeks of ads and never had to do an ad again about downloading and paying for that at that time turn-by-turn driving directions. So it's fun for me to watch the technology waves come and then see them crash to the shore and kind of see the results. So that's always been fun too. Um, and then I just love the power of words. Quantum is very science and math based, but they need words to explain it. And I think physicists have really talked to themselves for 100 years. And, now it's really at the point you have to explain this to other people beyond the quantum physicist community. So that's a big part of it. I do like the challenge of earned coverage. It's not easy. You really have to do your due diligence and really be honest and helpful. And I love to see when things hit, it feels a little bit like Christmas morning and seeing this great coverage when I wake up, and it's really gratifying to see. Also, with quantum, of course, being at this cutting edge of science and tech is just amazing. And watching all this take place and talking to some pretty powerful players and knowing them, it's been really great. And I think it's not just me, but the scientists are pretty much a consensus that this quantum era will be transformative for society. So that's really very interesting to me as well. Okay, let's see why this isn't moving then. Okay, so I just want to start with a cautionary tale. For those of you who saw my QDC webinar, you probably know who this is, but for everybody else, don't tell anybody. But I know you're all out there in the ether and can't tell each other. But this is a top American scientist, one of the top ever in American history. And he's got a statue in the Capitol building, US Capitol building. His name is Philo Farnsworth, and I'm guessing that most of you still don't know who he is or what he did. Well, he invented television. And that's an amazing thing to me. When I found out about Philo, and you know, I've been in emerging tech for a long time, and I started finding out his story. What an emerging tech story! I mean, he came a kid, a Utah, you know, in high school. He was following all these hobbyist magazines about creating a television, and he came up with a schematic and showed it to his high school physics teacher, and the physics teacher told him, "I think you're onto something here, Philo." And he ended up moving to San Francisco, like many do today, and got in front of the top bankers and railroad men of the time. And the first public image of something on a TV was in 1928, and he did a dollar sign. And he went on from there, and he did innovation after innovation. He started the first TV network in like Philadelphia, and him and his wife and friends would even put on a little variety show for an hour on a Saturday night. And he also had the first sort of closed circuit television camera, live camera at the World's Fair in 1939. But he had a very big competitor called RCA, and they were the radio guys, and they didn't like Philo, and they were trying their best to knock him out of business. And they took him to court and claimed he stole their patents, this and that. And he ended up, his high school physics teacher had kept that schematic he originally gave him and brought it, and he won in court against RCA. Then the war happened, and that put everything on hold. But he came out of the war, and RCA was doing a huge marketing push on television. Philo even started his own television company, but unfortunately, it didn't go anywhere. And he ended up, I think he was okay, created other things and made some money, but kind of disheartened, I think. But the anecdote is he was watching the moon landing in 1969, and the reason we were seeing that film from the moon was because of Philo Farnsworth technology. And he turned to his wife and he said, "I guess it was all worth it." So anyway, this is a tell I tell because I think in quantum there's these great scientists and great scientific minds and great inventors and innovations. I think in the back of the heads, everyone thinks like if I'm first or I'm best, I'll win this thing, you know. And I think we all know it really doesn't work that way. You know, there's got to be more to it, and a lot of it is built on people knowing about you and what you're doing early on and throughout the life of your company. That's really what it takes to fight against you know, established players, to fight against you know, other competitors. You have to be known. You have to be seen as in the game, and people have to know what you're doing and how you're doing it for you to have a real shot at succeeding. So, what are the keys to PR success? I stole this from my wife's second grade class, but very real, you know, diagram there, a portrait of Einstein. You know, I think everyone here knows about the scientific method. That's how we got here in quantum. That's how we got every technology that we have today. It works, obviously, and there's a strict method to it. It takes rigor and determination and lots of imagination, and you keep going after it. That's the scientific method. There are analogies to PR, and there's analogies to lots of fields, right? But you need to apply the same rigor and dedication to best practices to achieve results. That's also happening in public relations. There is the heuristic thing going on where there is trial and error. Like every pitch I do, I might tweak it for each individual if I have the time, or at least if there's updates, I will change certain things and see what my response gets. You know, there's a lot of that trial and error with quantum PR, and progress can be both incremental and transformative. I mean, that's you know, it takes time. Really, most of the time, it takes a while to build up trust with the media and knowledge of your company and interest in your company, and you can start kind of going up the ladder of audiences, the quantum trades and the HPC publications. And then there's more the deep tech publications like Interesting Engineering, places like that. And then sort of the sci tech publications like IEEE, Spectrum, and New Scientist, places like that. And then, more of the general IT press and then business press. That's usually how it works. And again, you can jump around those different places, but generally that's how it works because media like to see also where you're showing up and someone else validating your company. So, so I have my own, this is my take on what the PR method is, as analogous to the scientific method. We start with discovery. We have to understand the company market position, your target media audiences for your story, and really understand the place you have in the industry conversation. And the good news is because we're a specialist firm, we know the industry really well. And so we know what's going on a day-to-day, if not hourly basis. And that helps in understanding how to tell your story. Because, if you're out there saying, I've got 5 qubits, I'm gonna, I'm the best in the world. Well, obviously everyone knows there's some with already hundreds of qubits, right? And whatever you think about that being as a measure of performance, but still you have to know what's going on in the industry and what the media is thinking and saying about you or saying about your competitors. And then you have to craft, compelling messages. People think it's branding, and branding, I've been in branding, sort of situations where they take days and talk it all out in every little word. And I'm never quite sure what the value is sometimes, but this is media messaging, right? This is messaging that you can revise, you can update, but you want to make your 4 or 5 messages you'd like to get across. Like, let's say it's a year program, you want to get done by the end of the year and make sure that everybody, when they think about your company, they're thinking those things. And so we do this sometimes with clients before an interview. We apply the messages that make sense for that media. And so they're aware, like at some point, they want to get those messages in the conversation. So that's key. And then there's all sorts of strategies. There's not just one strategy anymore. People used to do like a year plan and have their strategies in stone. But really, it's a constant development of new story ideas and possibilities and opportunities to achieve coverage in the new sort of modern era of media. You do want a timeline of like your announcements and events, and things that you want to pitch for bylines and media and awards. And that's a great guide. And it's nice to have that kind of weekly check-in on where we're going, where we're at. But usually I've only seen most companies these days only do 3 months out, especially with announcements, because there's so much going on so fast. And a lot of that even changes, very quickly too. And then you want to execute. And execute means you really approach journalists with respect and give them the attention they deserve. You try to avoid bias. Obviously, they know we're pitching you as a client, but I'm going to say a little trick is I tell my staff, don't start with the client name in the subject or the first sentence unless it's truly part of the story. We're pitching stories to media. We're not just pitching companies and their commercial, whatever aspirations. So you have to really get into a mindset of a journalist and really come to their playing field because they're not going to come to yours, and then you always want to monitor results and see what's going on. A lot of times for clients, we do a thing called share of voice. That's one way of seeing how you're doing in PR. We start with a baseline when like, okay, you've got your 4 or 5 competitors or people you think are competitors. We have this media database that can make these beautiful charts to show you your share of coverage. And then we try to expand that over time, both the number and the quality of stories. And we can do that usually quarterly and show where it's all heading. So that's kind of the PR method that we apply for the most part. I think for this, everybody here, we know there's PR challenges in quantum. Some of them are still the same ones we started with 6 years ago. It's a very difficult technology to understand, very difficult science to understand. And that takes a constant education of the market. It really does. And all stakeholders need to better understand what it is. Although I know the famous saying is, if you understand quantum physics, you really don't understand it. But there are certain aspects of it that need to be communicated, and that's really starting to happen more now. There's a lot of coverage now, right? With with Google and Microsoft's announcement, and a lot of now there's more of a look at the race to get to a viable quantum computer. That's good and bad. I think with like the tech giants stepping in, I think they take up a lot of the oxygen, so they're in every story. Some of the second tier in terms of not as well known are not maybe getting enough of the press, or if they're not public, they're not getting as much of the press. And it's just they're not getting into the nuances for other possibilities. I think it's starting to happen though. They're starting to look, see what else is happening, like in the software side or in the QKD side and things like that. Because quantum takes up a wide swath of possibilities and quantum sensing and all that. Hype is an issue in quantum. We try to advise our clients as much as possible to avoid things you cannot back up, right? If you don't have clear backup or a third party who can back it up, then don't say it. There was a report came out 2 years ago or so called the Scorpion Capital Report that got everybody in quantum to take a step back and go, okay, I have to now really watch my hype and really watch what I say. And that worked for a while, and then it starts creeping back in because everybody gets competitive, and they're all trying to outdo the others and things like that. But over the long run, you have to look at the long term. You want to keep your reputation as absolutely, top line, and that's really where you want to go, and always stick to really what the science is and what the scientists are telling you to do. And there is this new thing of, no one knows really when quantum's going to provide value. We're hearing a lot of whispers that it's happening to some degree this year in certain use cases, but there's still uncertainty, especially in the media. There's a lot of uncertainty, and also nobody's really, which kind of surprises me sometimes. I thought they were pretty clear on what applications you'll be able to use quantum for, but nobody's quite sure what that's going to look like either. And that's still being, people have their opinions, and it's somewhat being worked out, but that changes too. So anyway, it's a very interesting thing. And I compare it to the 5G revolution, I was in telecom for a while there, and 10 years ago or so, and everybody knew there was 1G, 3G, 5G, and so everyone could like see something coming. There was precedent, okay, and the large firms were involved, and Verizon, and everybody's going, okay, well, yeah, and they were talking about, hype. There was a lot of hype about 5G, like, oh, you're gonna do remote surgeries and autonomous cars to be easy, and it was all that. But I'm still not clear in 5G, what it does exactly, even to today. But yeah, you just have to. There's no precedent for quantum. Like and that's the hard part, I think, to tell the story. Hard challenge is there's no way of saying, well, it did this back in the past, now it's going to do something even better. There's sort of that quantum 1.0. I guess that story's been told to some degree, but this is really using the weirdness of quantum that's never been done before. So that's also, I think, part of the challenge. The key to navigating these challenges is, like I've said, be clear in what you've actually accomplished. In recent days, we've seen some very sort of murky releases where it's not quite clear what we're saying, what the company's saying. So it's really going to be really exact in what you've actually accomplished. If it's a toy problem, say it out loud. It's a toy problem, but say why it's important too. Give it context. I don't think there's any reason to exaggerate anything in quantum. It's all fairly amazing if you look back even 5, 10 years ago and where the industry was. The media like peer-reviewed papers best, preferably in the top tiers, but they'll take others. Then they feel more comfortable writing about, what you've done. I think it's a great idea, and we've seen this with several clients, is to talk to influencers before you go out public with your story. If it's a big announcement, it could be analysts, it could be top bloggers, it could be, friendlies to the company, to let them tell you how you're explaining this. If you're explaining it well, if you're backing it up, sort of do that test run with people that and you work with. I can say that to a media outlet, they want to hear from academic experts, people still in academia or maybe retired, who can support the science, right, that you're claiming. It doesn't mean they have to be huge promoters of your company and say they got the best technology, this is the greatest thing ever. But just to say, like, yeah, this science looks good. It's factual. I believe it's right. And then a lot of times they're asked to offer context, like, has anyone ever done this before, and what does it really mean? And that makes the media story, and it's good for quantum companies to offer that, to offer find third-party experts before you go out, with an announcement and offer it to media, so they can have somebody who, okay, well, this is great, as somebody I can talk to that's not with the company. So that's always a good idea. And I do believe the old adage, under promise, over deliver, is really important now in quantum. I think everyone's seen sort of the negative articles that have come out where people have been claiming advantage, and maybe advantage was there, maybe it wasn't. And media before, like, barely really covered quantum for a large degree. Now they're covering it, and they're covering it very critically. So you have to know, like, it's changed, and you have to know that you have to be very, very cautious and careful and make sure you got all your T's crossed and your I's dotted. Um, so this is other things you can do, other things to keep in mind when you're talking, working to try to get media coverage. I say this because I'm always shocked that people don't respect the media as much as I think they should. They'll leave a meeting to talk to their top investor, top prospect, whatever. But for media, sometimes they'll say, well, I'll get back to them in a couple of days. It's like, well, that's not how they work. They work on very, like, sometimes minute by minute deadlines they have to get done. And if they don't talk to you, they'll talk to your competitor and include someone else in their stories. And the next time they may not come back to you because you didn't get back to them in a timely fashion. So I just feel like, respect the media as much as possible. Treat them like your best customer. Like, oh, they're calling. Let's give them what they need if we can. If you can't, you can't. You respect how they work. I always tell people, like, if you feel like something's really important, okay, but just keep in mind, if you have a chance to talk to either a million people that are part of their audience, or maybe 10,000 people that are absolutely people you want to talk to through the media outlet. So you're not just talking to a reporter, you're talking to this huge audience that's out there. So how often you get a chance to talk to thousands of potential stakeholders, or a million plus just people in general? Not very often, but the media hold that power, so that's another reason to treat them with respect. And I do say, I know, like, the CEO may not always be available, but I think if you think about having a bunch, several spokespeople for different types of stories or at different levels of media, and not just the CEO, so the media get to talk to somebody from the company. I think that's really a good idea. Because again, a lot of these, like, I've seen it in other industries. A blogger starts out and he, like, doesn't have much audience, and then he becomes one of the top tier, essentially media in the industry. So, no one knows who's going to rise to the top. So I treat everybody well. It's just good sense anyway, but, you should try to treat everybody equally. And then I would say, listen to your PR people, because they're going to tell you what you need to do to make the media happy. And that's what you want to try to do. Um, Another thing I just say is, value every opportunity that you get. Um, I always say, like, treat it like a gold in your hands, like, oh, they're interested. That's hard to get. It's hard to get interest. So now what do we do with it, right? So let's make sure we give them the best, experience we can talking to our company. So it means trying to make sure they know what their deadline is, and hitting it on deadline, be on time, don't cancel interviews. Obviously, sometimes that just happens in media. It can be understanding, but you just try to avoid it at all costs. Have your messages understood by you and your PR counsel to make sure you know what you're going to say to that particular media's audience. There is this whole thing where media is still trying to understand this tech, and I think we've all seen lots of stories, especially after these huge announcements from Google and others, that the media kind of got it wrong. I've seen totally wrong stories in Barron's, for instance, not to point them out. It's just some media are brand new to this and they're still trying to get it. So I completely understand that. So you just have to be patient with them, and you almost have to almost always have to give a quantum primer, usually, especially the non-sci-tech media. And deliver what you promise. If you said, oh, well, I have a paper we did a year ago that explains all this, to make sure they get that paper, right? And it's in a timely fashion, that kind of follow up. And again, avoid the hype, bring the receipts. If you're going to say something, make sure you have proof or somebody to back you up and show that you've done that. In PR these days, we're very opportunistic. There's called newsjacking and trendjacking, where, okay, the Google announcement comes out or whatever, and they're looking for people to say, what's your opinion of it? And if it makes sense, then we try to get our clients' opinions out there, right? There's other ways in other than like pitching stories. There's bylines, which I get to say like one of our clients was kind of shut out of TechCrunch for a decent Series A round, and we felt bad about it. But we pitched a byline to the TechCrunch that made sense for their audience, and we got them in that way, which probably was going to be more better read than anything they would have got just in the straight news story. We try to take advantage of events. Like if you're at an event, there's almost always some media attending, and you want to make sure you talk to the media there when you're there. Third-party announcements. I've seen this in my entire career. In my career, large company is announcing them, but they don't care that much that about this particular announcement. But you're a partner in that announcement. Well, then you make the most of it if they're okay with it, and push it out there as much as possible. And so take advantage of the bigger branding with your company name. And there's also other sides I think need to be told in quantum, the human interest side of stories, these amazing scientists that are doing this stuff, amazing entrepreneurs. There's a whole bunch of stories that need to be told on the personal front, I think, in quantum. Um, you know, Make sure you're aware of the social media influencers, and case studies is really if you can come up with a case study, and it's not easy in quantum, but even someone exploring quantum is still interesting to media. They don't get many case studies there out there, so those are important as well. And I want to talk a little more about the industry influencers. So they're having a big influence on quantum, and I think even a couple are maybe on this in our audience today. But if you're a company, you have to know that this is a even more complex relationship than the media, but it does require your attention. Um, the line's blurring between media influencers, and what that really means is they both have influence, right? And they both have audiences. And the influencers in quantum may have more of the right audience than like a mass media outlet might. They can be podcasters, Substack bloggers, LinkedIn leaders, YouTubers, all the rest. There is sponsorship aspect to it all, but it's not like you're just in the old days of just buying an ad somewhere, right? Like, oh yeah, I want an ad in the New York Times, and I want it over here, and I want it, go do it. Influencers have to protect their audience and their brand, so it has to work with them and what they're trying to do, and keeping their audience, enlightened and enthused for them. And so there are sponsorships like through YouTubers, but it has to be like a match. They want to like the story first, and then we have like an influencer program with a major company right now. They then send you to their essentially their agent to start negotiating what the price of the like a sponsored content might be. Because they just don't want to look like they're shills for a company, which I completely understand. So there are sponsors available, and I know with some of the analysts and bloggers, you don't necessarily want or have to have like a sponsored blog, but maybe that would make sense at some point if they want to do that. But also, these are people who with great insights into the industry, and you should use them for reports and market analysis that you can know work for you internally, as well as you can publicize, and use the report. It could be a sponsored report with a major, Substack blogger and analyst, and people understand like, well, it's got this third party, and so they were probably probably might be a valid report, and this might be interesting, and you might get actual and traditional media coverage out of it. So those are things you can do, different ways of sponsoring. I would say, just tread carefully and be respectful of their audience and how they work. And I would just say, like, again, I keep using Google because that was the big announcement, along with others earlier this year. They had all their influencers, and when I say influencers, there's like social media content creators and thought leaders, and sometimes they're both in the same thing, sometimes they're different. But they made sure they had like top tier guys like Presco and Aronson ready to talk to media, and that was pretty obvious to me. So it does help in telling your story if these people believe what you're saying and can support it. So what does success look like? And I got a few more minutes here, then we can take any questions. So I assume many of you know Mike Bursick of Q Control, great guy. He was our first client way back when in 2019. He had this thing where he wanted to be better known in Australia. He was from the US and led the quantum program at the university there in Sydney. And then started a firm, spun out from there and started his own firm. And we started getting him some decent press there in Australia, and that was great. And then he said, well, let's try like Europe, and then let's try North America. And we started getting more press for him in those areas as well. And it kept building and building. And again, it wasn't easy, but I give Mike a lot of credit. He was always ready to talk to me at any time of the day or night, I have to say. And he really helped us a lot by being available like that and being always very had something to say, and the media love that. Even if it's contrarian to what they think is going on, that's even a better story sometimes. And Mike was really really a master at that in a lot of ways. So it's great to have it's invaluable to have a CEO who's that active in PR. So we kept I think building up their reputation, and then this Damien Cave had wanted to write about the company for a good year, he told us, but he couldn't find the right hook for the story. And then this thing happened with the AUKUS agreement, and a White House official was coming down to Australia, and so it all became something for him he could write. He's based in Sydney. And to this day, I have not seen this long a story of a quantum startup with like full color photos and beautiful shots of the lab and full story of what the company's doing yet. I don't know unless I missed something like Sci Quantum or something, but a smaller startup, not like a tech giant. I have not seen this in the New York Times. That was transformational in Mike's words for his company. I just have to say, within the weeks following this announcement, I kept watching Mike's LinkedIn, and he was behind the White House gates in the White House rooms, that no one ever goes into. It looks like, I think it's kind of like when you have that kind of story in the New York Times, it's a validation to a lot of the power brokers, like, oh, this technology is for real. I have to pay attention to it, and this company's for real. So anyway, that's kind of like what can happen when you're diligent over time with reporters telling the story. That this kind of amazing result can happen and can be transformational. So yeah, the key effects is there is that snowball effect. It's real. You start out small usually, and then it keeps building and building your reputation and your visibility. You just keep educating the media, and we always include top tier media in our outreach when it makes sense, and keep educating them. And there is something to do with timing, but the timing doesn't happen if they didn't know about you before, right? If he wasn't already interested in the company and the AUKUS agreement happened, or whatever that was that set him to do it, he would not have covered Q Control. He didn't know all the history of them. And then, yeah, again, a motivated and articulate executive is really something great to have. I just want to talk about just quickly about a more recent success story. This happened the past couple of weeks. I don't know if the client wanted to be named, so I'll just tell you that they had like 3 scientific papers come out in 1 week. We try to advise against that. Don't load up great stories in 1 week. It spread them out a bit. But they have their own companies have their own internal reasons for doing things, so we understand. One was an actual Nature paper, but that's not what. Other than the paper being in Nature, that's not the story that hit Nature. It came from 2 other papers that were only archive papers, and I think there may have been a blog post with each one, but that was it, right? And they didn't really have time even to get really third party, sort of validators. But we pitched them anyway, and I think over the years we've been pitching these publications for a long time, and especially this company. And I think they trust that, okay, this might be real. I'm going to look at it. That's all we're asking. We're not saying believe us right from the. And then they looked at the papers, and then they talked to other scientists in the industry, and they all wrote stories off these archive papers. And I got to say, it's very rare to see a standalone story on a commercial company's research, non-peer reviewed in like phys.org, Physics World. New scientists. I mean, it's an amazing feat, I just have to say. And we're in all these, and I think the New Scientists, we got like 2 or 3 stories in it in the past couple of weeks. And these are all big standalone stories on the company and its research. Scientific American is still going to hit hopefully this week, so I included that. But I don't know how you it's hard for me even to put a value on this. Like this is really telling the world, like, these guys are for real. And they're doing great things in science, and they're in a lot of ways they may be leading the pack. I would suggest going to our website if you want to see. I think we've posted 2 or 3 of the stories already on there if you want to see what they look like. So the key takeaways for me today is just you have to be known to succeed. There's no other way around it. It'd be nice if you didn't, in a way, like, I wouldn't have gone through all this trouble, or if people just know that I'm great, and why would they just cover me and know about me? You have to be known to succeed. The only company, one of in recent years, like OpenAI wasn't really known until it succeeded, right? It got just took off organically, but they also weren't prepared for all that attention, and they didn't have a legacy of people knowing who they are and feeling comfortable with their management, and so it still pays off to like still have that story out there as early as you can, as often as you can. It's difficult work. It's not easy, but the PR people the agency will try to make it as easy as possible, but the company has to be involved. It's not like you just pay for a PR firm and walk away. But amazing progress will happen if you're diligent and go with all the best practices. Um, so I just want to quickly say, these are things that HKA does. Very, just a quick look at everything that we do for our clients. And then also, here's the audience that we target. And just so you know, we have people, we have a great person who's the only, I keep telling her, is the only quantum PR person in DC, dedicated to quantum the past 3 or 4 years. And she knows all the players and knows what's going on in the government. So I know a lot of companies we work with try to want to get US government attention. And so, yeah, we help you try to reach all these targets, and we work every day to do it. And that's the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Mike,
Yes.
here we go. There we go. I wanted to make sure I could start my video again. So one of the questions that we have is how do you build visibility when there isn't any upcoming news? I think that's a challenge we've all faced.
Yeah, that's great. And I think that comes in where I was talking about ideating story ideas. So we get in the weeds. We're kind of like the intermediary. We're the media for your company, except we're internal and we're going to only put out good news, not bad news. So we just try to really sort of talk to you like as if we're a Forbes or another media outlet, and get the feel for what other stories are there. And there always are great stories in every company if you look hard enough and talk and figure it out, especially in quantum. So yeah, and there's other ways to go other than telling like more profile stories. There's a byline article sort of the thought leadership way is another way to get coverage. And then being a commentator on news in the industry. That's kind of that news jacking thing I was talking about. So there's a variety of ways, and and then you did nail the part. The hard part of PR is the stories between the news.
And I think just like you have to build relationships with reporters and analysts, you have to build a relationship with us, right? I think people are so busy, and I know that we do not ask for meetings unless we really want an update and we're really going to use your time wisely. But I know I've gotten lots of ideas for new stories just based on updates, right? Like this is what's coming down the pike, and this is our software update, and this is our hardware, this is our new partnership. So yeah, I think I find those questions so valuable, those conversations so valuable, and really try to be very respectful of clients' time too.
Yeah.
This kind of goes back to one of your examples. How do you balance between consistently putting out news, but not too much news? We don't really want 3 papers in 1 week, but we don't want, a month with no announcements either.
Yeah, that's a great question as well. It's case by case basis. It comes down to us letting the PR firm know as early as possible what you're thinking about announcing, and then letting us give you our best take on whether it's impactful enough for a press release, or maybe it's a blog post, or maybe it's just a LinkedIn post. And even if it's a LinkedIn post or a blog post, those are things we still might send to target media because they don't necessarily always have to have a press release. So I think it's really evaluating, letting the PR firm evaluate the news value, and that's what you want to do.
Right. I think lots of clients are so buried in the work that they have to bring us in so that we can say, oh no,
Yes,
wait, that's newsworthy. People would be interested. Um,
absolutely.
so we do have another question. Does HKA work with any of the quantum hubs, such as universities, economic development areas, as opposed to individual companies?
Yeah, well, we work with QEDC, which is not really a hub, but it's like the consortium and we represent them, and we've talked with several hubs. I'm trying to remember. Hillary's probably my boss is probably telling me like we have worked with quantum hubs, but I know we know the people well in all the quantum hubs, and actually they're on our influencer list. So when I said we have an influencer program for a major tech company, it's 400 plus influencers around the world that we're always adding to, and I think you can't get that list anywhere. It's something we build over time and through our relationships. And so we include the quantum hubs in all those and all our outreach where it makes sense. So yeah, I think we have good relationships. We know the people at them, but I can't remember if we did a project or two for any.
And I will take this moment to promote the Quantum Spin by HKA. We have a podcast that I host, and when I'm looking for guests, I try to be very deliberate about, oh, German. There's a lot going on in Germany. There's a lot going on in the Netherlands. Singapore is still on my list of potential sources for a guest, but it's a global industry, and we definitely try to be very aware of that with all of our outreach. Um, what do you think, Mike, is one of the most common mistakes that companies make when either making PR plans or not making PR plans?
That's a great question. I was going to add to like, what do we do look for news in between the news? And a lot of times they don't know what they have that's great. And so that's why I follow every client's LinkedIn and every client's social. And because it's usually you find things like, oh, shoot, I never knew they were doing that. So I think it's being completely what am I trying to say? Just tell everything that's going on. Tell us everything that's going on, and because it could be really interesting to somebody out there. So I think the planning is nice. Like plan with your major announcements coming up, and figure out the best timing, and give yourself enough time and prep to make them absolutely as covered as possible and seen as possible. But then also keep talking to your PR firm to tell them everything that's going on around the company because there's just so many avenues for coverage and interest. So I just say PR has become more real time these days. It's not as much like people used to like said 6 month or 1 year plans. And today it's a lot more day to day and what can you do today to take advantage of the current conversation.
We have someone who has raised his hand, Mohammed. I will unmute you so you can ask your question live and in person. Let's see. There we go. There we go. You should
I
be on.
yes. I see in different companies that they are just repeating the news in their websites. Um, uh, Something like let's say Pascal have a product launch and then other websites just repeating what they are written so it doesn't bring something new uh, or something like that. We are in QGI. We don't do that. We just use the news just for marketing. We don't just copy paste it. Um, uh, um, we somehow making summarization, the key findings or the key takeaways. I think this strategy um, will avoid repetitions in the web. How do you think about it? Or how can
Oh,
I gotta say I'm not quite sure what the question is exactly, but I will just say we have a client that's using GQI for before it's really getting started in the market to get a market analysis of where they are in the industry and where they should be or could be placed. And to me, that's highly invaluable. Like, I mean, back in the day when I was doing enterprise tech PR, everyone would start with the analysts. Like they start with them and try out their messages and get a market report of like how this product would fit in and who would want it. I think it's really valuable to do these days in quantum. I know GQI and others have tremendous knowledge of the industry and it's stuff that helps actually PR in the end because you really see the placement of the company and where it's going, where it needs to go.
and I think the other key to avoiding that repetition that you mentioned, Mohammed, is thinking ahead. Like if you know there's a big announcement coming from a competitor, or even something like the Nobel Prizes, right? If you have your perspective and you know what you think about, quantum error correction or hardware advances or quantum volume or whatever the topic may be, we try to work with clients a little bit ahead of time. Maybe it's just a few hours before, but if you know your perspective and you have a comment ready to go, we can send that out to the media as soon as the news hits. And that really increases your chances of getting quoted in a article. And if you do have your own distinct perspective, it avoids that sort of repetition. I know what you mean about that. You're like, okay, I've read this 5 times now. Doesn't mean anything. So, um, Mike, one other question that I wanted to ask is about spokespeople. I think we automatically sort of gravitate toward the CEO, but we've had good success working with engineers and physicists and other folks who certainly know the guts of the company, but maybe aren't the immediate go-to for a spokesperson.
Yeah. I think it's really important to, again, respond to media requests as much as possible and as fast as possible. And sometimes, the best media relations, I was told from the very beginning is if you have to send them to somebody else, that's fine. Like, oh, well, we're not the right people for this. Let's get you another expert that I know personally that'll be able to answer this question. Help them get their stories done in a intelligent way that they would appreciate and their audiences would appreciate. That's kind of like the overall approach. But I would say like it is smart. I know a lot of CEOs want to be the only spokesperson, but if you're not always available and you won't be, it's great to have at least 2 or 3 others ready to go. And maybe you'll give them the specific topics and make sure they're media trained. And that's really helpful for media as well as your coverage.
And I think lots of folks assume that the relationship has to be sort of adversarial. I mean, journalists aren't just going to spit back whatever you tell them, but they will. I think most journalists want to do a good job and want to be right. And with quantum computing, you have to kind of make an extra effort to make sure that you're describing the technology quickly. So if you can be a resource for people, for reporters, they'll remember. I mean, those had stars in my my contact list of someone
Yeah,
who, if I had a question, I could ask it, or they would say, well, not me, but this person. So
that's a
that's
great
a
point.
really,
That's a
really
great point. I just have to tell an anecdote. So there was a good Lord, what was old, but way back when routers were coming around, and Linksys, the right here in Orange County, the CEO, he would go to New York and talk to PC Magazine's Michael Miller and give him the preview of all their products for the year and ask what you think. And so Mike Miller like could even plan ahead, like when I'm going to cover stuff and how I'm going to cover it. And he would actually look for his feedback too. I think he'd do the same with Walt Mossberg, at the Wall Street Journal at the time. So yeah, it's you can have that relationship with media. They love to be part of the industry, and inside the industry and get the inside scoop as soon as possible.
Sort of the flip side of that, being nice to journalists is, it inevitably happens that sometimes someone gets the facts wrong or gets a detail wrong or spells a name wrong. And that's the easy ones to fix. But what advice do you have about working with reporters when there is a correction that needs to be made?
Yeah, I've always found reporters are very open to it. They actually, most of them appreciate it that you're pointing something that isn't factually correct. And the key is to make it easy for them to make the change because they do have to go to their editors and say, "Oh, I got this wrong," and or whatever. And so what we always do, and we just did this recently with a client, like we just pointed out, here's your sentence, and here's where we think this sentence now is going to be more factual. And so they can just plug the words in that if they want to change it, that's fine. But we're going to make it so easy for them to do. And they don't have to feel like I had to like really wrap my head around this. If they tell me that's the facts, okay, that's probably the facts. So I'll make the change. So yeah, I think it's fine. It is going to get more, I think, dangerous in PR these days, quantum PR. It's going to have people are going to start seeing it as having political things, and there's more like controversial things you can get involved in. You have to be very careful about being involved in and make sure it makes sense for you as a company and what your goals are. It may make sense to talk to some of that, but you have to be careful that you know what you're doing. Yeah.
Right, sort of a case-by-case evaluation. Some
Case by
news worth jacking and some news you just want to stay as far away from as possible.
yes, yes, exactly.
I think we have time for maybe one more question. This is about how to get attention to quantum industry news in a news realm that is just so full of international relations and tariffs and bad things happening. So what are your tactics for getting attention in this busy news realm?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, we have a reporter friend of ours, and I think she really is a friend of ours, but also we still, have to earn our stories. And she had said that I'm working so much on tariffs, I can't do any other stories right now. And she loves quantum and she wants to write about quantum. So yeah, it is a tough thing. I I think I think the conversation will turn because it's inevitable to quantum. Personally, I just feel like it's the 800-pound gorilla in the room right now that you can try to pretend it's not there, but it's going to define the way the world looks, in my opinion. So I think it'll come back around, and I think there's still enough stories out there. You don't need to force it. I think there's still quantum stories. Government people, especially though, are writing mostly about sort of the administration, what's happening there. So they're hard to get a hold of these days. But other press, I think, kind of opening their doors and their minds to quantum, and I think there's still more quantum coverage than there ever has been. Even with all the other news going on.
Right. And even though, as a reporter, you might get 3 press releases over the course of several months, and it would be that third one that would trigger coverage, right? And you can go back to those previous
Right.
emails and say, oh yeah, I remember this. And so that again, to me, speaks to the consistent messaging, staying in touch, because you never
Yeah,
know what will catch a reporter's eye, but you want to be ready when they do. Um,
absolutely.
so thank you very much for your time and your questions. We appreciate your engagement and interest. You can find us on LinkedIn and you can find us at hkamarcom.com. So thanks very much for your time today.